Darren Cross here. Welcome to Module 2 of Business 400 Driving Business Opportunities. Um, this module is starting to get a little bit deep, but we're going to take it step by step here so that I can provide you with the groundwork that you need to be successful going forward and in this module. So, in module 1, we actually introduced the concept of blue ocean strategy, how it's about re-imaging how we see value and really how we can actually provide innovation. So it's about creating products and operating in a way that actually makes your competition irrelevant rather than trying to jump in and compete with them. We also did the 1-2 blog assignment where you selected a company, you started to develop the value proposition. We talked about how to look at profit on a very cursory level. And then you introduced your new product. So what's going to happen here is we're going to continue to do this and develop these ideas as we go through the course. And in module 2, we're starting to talk about how to look at market opportunities and financial opportunities. So often companies or individuals or entrepreneurs are looking to say, hey, how do I even know if I should, what kind of product I should offer, or how do I know if it's going to make money, that kind of thing. And there's no real exact science because we don't have perfect research that tells us exactly how many number of people are going to be interested in our product. But to the extent that we can, we try to guess. And sometimes this stuff is just kind of instinctual. We have a suspicion that everybody likes this, or that a lot of people like this product or have this need, and you get the impression that things are really going to go well. Well, we're going to dig into that a little bit and provide some framework and some shape to how to be thinking as you move forward. Now, as we're going through this module, what I want you to understand is that I'm doing a couple of things. I'm actually setting the groundwork for the next assignment that you're going to have in this course. But then we're also looking at I'm kind of setting the foundation for some things that you're going to be doing in the future as well. Okay. So as you're looking at this, a lot of the stuff that I have in this presentation is actually my just kind of clarifying some things that you're reading in the material, and also shoring up with some stuff that I think that you need. All right. So, this is just my explanation of some things and adding some extra things in that I think you need. In addition to this, I'll also provide you some links to website resources and videos that I think might be helpful. Okay. In order to be successful, I want you to go ahead and look at all the material provided by SNU and all the material that I'm providing you, so that you can just ground yourself in the foundation of all of the things necessary to be successful. You don't have to sit here and take copious notes or anything like that. You can use this video as just a guide, but this is just things that are there as resources for you. And some of this stuff is going to be getting your mind thinking the way that it needs to be thinking. Okay. So the learning objectives for Module 2 are to compare revenue increases to current revenue in percentages. So often we'll look at what has happened in the past, what revenue is now, so that we can see what that means as far as percentage increases. So it's really just kind of revenue analysis and understanding what's going on with trends in revenue for particular companies. All right, we're going to also assess the likelihood of a project yielding profitability. So we're going to do that by looking at trends, past trends, market opportunity, demand, and what we think the financial opportunity might be for your product. Okay. And then we're going to develop the unique value proposition by revisiting the blue ocean strategy. So what we're going to continue to do is define and pare down the value proposition. Okay. So looking back, I talked about what value proposition really is. And I know things kind of got confusing with that first module, because it's like, okay, do we do this for the company, or do we do it for our product? You're actually going to do it for both. So you want to be determining what is the company's thing that they're offering, right? What is their proposition for what they're going to provide to their customer? And then when you develop your product, you're thinking about that too, because you want to either be in line with it. So you want to continue to deliver on that value proposition, or it might shift, and it's okay if it shifts, But the thing is, you're going to be thinking about that more deeply. So I'm going to provide you a resource, which is starting to talk about things that we're going to talk about in the future, but I'm going to provide you a resource from the business model canvas that is another perspective on unique value proposition. And I'll provide you a couple of resources that can help you kind of shore this up. But the idea is when we're done, you want to have a short, succinct statement about what the value is. You don't want to have this long, drawn out statement about the things you do and all of this stuff. You just want to be able to say in a sentence or two what the thing is that sets you apart from your competition. So we'll develop that in this module as well. Now, in the assignment, we're actually going to be talking about target market. When we are talking about delivering a value proposition, that value is determined by the buyer. And so in order to really understand the benefit that we're providing for the buyer, shows up in the form of value, we need to understand who our buyer is. And so part of the assignment this week is the intended market. You'll also hear it called the target market or your avatar or whatever. There's interchangeable terms, but the idea here is that we're looking at the target market. And what is a target market? The target market is the group that you're targeting. It's the group of people who are most likely to buy your product. It is not the people who are welcome to use your product. And I want to make that distinction because quite often when I'm grading papers, what I see is that students say things like, everyone is welcome to use this product. This product can be used by anybody. That's not the point, because there are lots of things that can be used by anybody, and there are lots of things that you would welcome anybody to use. Of course, we want to get as many customers as possible, but the truth of the matter is it's not efficient to try to market to the entire world. Okay? So that's my statement here. It's usually not feasible or efficient to market to the masses. Focusing on a targeted segment makes marketing more impactful. Why? Because when we understand the nuances of a target market, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit, then we can better meet the needs. Think back to your marketing class. The 4 P's of marketing, that's called your marketing mix: product, place, promotion, price. The reason why it's called the marketing mix is you mix those things in such a way that it makes sense for your target market. That's why we're changing it, because your target market demands something specific. If I am a gourmet chef, then the pots and pans that I require are different from the pots and pans that a college kid might need. Therefore, the functionality of the product, so the product characteristics are going to change. The place, which is also distribution channel and where you're marketing, that's going to change. I'm going to get my stuff from someplace else. Instead of going to Walmart like a college kid might do, I might buy from like an industrial restaurant supply shop. Not only that, the price is going to be different. College kid is not going to pay $500 for pots and pans. But I'm going to pay that because I get something out of it that those other things just don't provide me. And then how do we promote it? We're promoting the features of gourmet cooking or executive chefing, right? Rather than, hey, this is cheap. So the messaging is completely different. So we mix that marketing mix in a way specifically for the target market. So because of that, we want to identify our target markets. Now, that's not to say that a company cannot target more than one market. In fact, they often do. It's just that when you see the marketing campaign is focused towards a specific market. So you might hear, a company saying something different and accentuating different features for different groups of people based upon who that target market is. For our purposes, what you want to do is you want to hone in on one single target market. And if you remember, your target market should be a consumer market. It's not a business market or a governmental market or things like that, because then you don't really have to compete as much, and our process of identifying and profiling a target market isn't going to make much sense. So how do we arrive at the target market? We go through something called the STP process: segmentation, targeting, and positioning. Now, positioning is that value proposition that we've been talking about this whole time. It's really saying, okay, once I found my target market, what value am I offering to you? Okay. And again, I'll have some resources that help you dig into that. But let's talk about segmentation. What is segmentation? It's grouping your consumers according to their needs. So you're going to have several groups of people within which their needs are similar, or their usage patterns are similar, right? So the needs are similar within these groups, but they are distinct and separate enough between the groups. So you have different groups of people who could use products like yours, but they are grouped according to their needs. I always talk about the bicycle market, right? So when we're thinking about bikes, there are all kinds of different bikes that you could buy. So there are different groups of people who might buy a bike. And because of that, we would change how we would market and what our marketing mix would be, right? So if you look at the different, these are just some examples. So you have the recreational rider. This is just someone who rides their bike for fun. This could be kids. This could be just adults who just want to get out and ride because it's fun. It could be people, I could add in here, people who are riding for health, right? Now, what we want to do, and I'll tell you why later, because quite often when we talk about segmentation, and Google segmentation, and I know many of you will, like, what is the segmentation all about? You're going to get some different interpretations or different conceptualizations of what segmentation really is. So some people say you can segment by demographics, you can segment by psychographics. We'll talk about all of those things, but those aren't different types of segmentation per se. Those are really dimensions of your target market. And I'll talk about what that really means here in a little bit. But in order to minimize confusion, the best thing to do is to actually name your segments according to how they're using the product or what their needs are, right? So you can say, when we're talking about the bike market, we can say recreational rider. We can say competitive cyclist. So the people who are actually, gearing up for the Tour de France or competing in those types of races. Maybe there's a BMXer, those people who want to jump mountains and do tricks and things like that. These three types of bikes are different. The products are different. I would venture to say that the pricing is different. I know that the pricing is different. I have a friend who is a competitive cyclist. He bought a bike for $12,000. I would never buy a bike for $12,000 because there's no benefit to my lifestyle. The way I conceive my life, there is no way a bike is going to be that important to me. Okay. BMXers, those bikes are probably differently priced. They also need different things, right? So where a competitive cyclist might have a lighter bike, maybe the BMXer has a more durable bike because they're up in the air flying all the time. And maybe the recreational rider has a bike that looks cool and has the cool grips, or maybe it has streamers coming out of the handlebars or whatever it might be. And you would get to these people in different ways. You would communicate different messages to them. So therefore, they are separate and distinct between the groups, but inside of the groups, the needs are similar. So that's really what we're doing when we're segmenting. Then we want to actually target one of these segments. And what do? All we do is just select one. So by selecting a target, that's our targeting. We're saying, okay, we're gonna deal with the recreational rider. That's who our target market is. So this is what you really want to do, and I'm going to guide you in the assignment video. This is what you really want to do when you're arriving at your target market and when you're trying to describe them. Okay, now we're going to go into some more detail. Targeting is selecting one of these segments and describing them according to the following dimensions. Now, this is what I was talking about before. Some people say you segment on the basis of these things, and you do. There are different segments of groups. So there are people who are in similar age groups. There are people who have similar personality traits, but The way that most books put this, textbooks put this, not most, some books put this, or if you're looking at information online, they're going to say, well, you can either do demographic, psychographic, behavior, or geographic. No, that is not true. In order to be as thorough as you possibly can, what you're going to do is first segment and figure out all the groups of people who could use your product. Then you're going to target one, and then you're going to look at that group and describe them according to these dimensions. So you're going, all of these are things about people that that describe them in one way or another. Okay, so you really want to have some demographic, psychographic, behavioral, geographic information on all of your target markets. You don't, a lot of times I see people say this is targeted to people 18 to 24. That is not good enough. There are some products that 18 to 24, that all 18 to 24-year-olds like, or that most like, but not all, because some of them have different lifestyles. Some of them think differently. Some of them actually grew up and their worldviews caused them to behave differently when it comes to products. So you want to kind of hone in on what's going on. So what you do is you say, this is my target market. What are their demographics likely to be? And be careful not to say, this can still be people of all ages. People do that all the time because they're in marketing mode and they're saying, I want to sell this to people of all ages. No, we're saying, who, when you look at your target market, what is their group likely to be? So if it's a recreational rider, it's probably going to be more kids, right? I don't think that you see very many adults who are out there just because they have a cool bike that they got for Christmas. 40, 50-year-olds. They're not like, hey, I got a cool bike. Let me go out and be cool and ride bikes with my friends. Now, in your mind, you're saying, no, I know some people who ride bikes. Yeah, I know that you do. There are people who do that, but it's probably not for recreation. It's probably not, I'm just going to go out and be cool on my bike. It's probably, hey, I want to get out and move. I want to just start moving, and that's something that's easy to do. And so therefore, they're in a different segment. So I want you to, but there are some people who just ride for recreation. Okay, so you're saying, what are the likely demographics, right? What are demographics? Things like age, gender, income, education, marital status, sexual orientation, familial status. Do they have brothers? You're trying to gather as much descriptive information like, hey, this is what I am, and you can characterize me according to that. And the truth of the matter is, when we are gathering data, you see groupings of these types of things. Most people tend to be this age. Most people tend to be, have this job situation. Most people tend to be college educated, or most people tend not to be. When you're looking at the demographics of a specific target market. But in addition to that, you can look at the psychographics, which really kind of shape what people are thinking or what's going on in their minds that might shape how they perceive products and how they buy products, right? So things like, what are their personality traits? All right, are they introverted or extroverted? That might matter because maybe that helps to decide if they buy online or if they need face to face, right? What are their attitudes and beliefs? What are the things that shape what's important to them? It's important for me to go get this thing, or I'm not buying that because I don't like what that company is doing. That kind of thing. What is their lifestyle? What are the hobbies that they have? What are the things that they tend to do that might lead to their wanting a different product, right? That's another dimension. Now, not only is their age, income, all of that stuff, but there's also what's going on in their minds. What are their opinions about things? That thing kind of shapes, those two elements shape what a person might decide. Then you have the behavioral elements. What is their purchasing behavior? How often do they purchase? Are they hard on the product? Do they shop around before they purchase, or do they impulse buy a lot? Do they tend to stick with the same product all the time? How often? I think I said that. How often do they purchase? Do they stock up on stuff, or do they buy when they need it? These are things that help you understand a little bit more about how to communicate with them. Finally, geographic information. Are there some things? Does geography matter? Right? Does where they live matter? The country or the region of a country. Is this something that's particular to a different region or town? Is it something that works better for people who live in rural environments or urban environments? Does the climate matter? Are you going to sell a lot of surfboards in Alaska? Probably not. So these are the types of things that kind of shape your target market, and this is how you want to describe them. Now, I guide you in the assignment video, and I tell you exactly how to look at that. But I want you to have this kind of detail. So when you're describing your target market, you're going to say, "My target market is this group of people." You know, the competitive cyclists. They tend to be age, blah 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 blah. They tend to be male versus female, or you can say 47% of the market is male, blah blah blah. They tend to have higher incomes. They tend to be college educated or not. There are different elements of the demographic stuff. Then you'll say, also, these people are competitive. They like to, they're driven and they like to have this feature with their product. They buy a bike like once every 4 years, or you just got to understand the entire picture. Okay. So that's how you're going to describe your target market. It's not just they're in this age group, females age 18 to 24, right? It's more than that. The more detail you have, the better it is, because that's telling you, that's giving you more insight on how to communicate with your potential customer. Okay. Now, once we understand our target, understanding our target market is part of this, and the reason why it matters is because we want to figure out how we're going to sell stuff, right? So we'll get back to that later. Another part of what we're talking about in this module is the revenue analysis, right? So you already made a projection based on just your gut. And we're going to hone in on this more and more as we go through. But basically, I wanted to kind of provide a little bit of a foundation, because when I see people describing this, describing finances, it a lot of people are off, and they're just out there winging it and saying some stuff and not really saying anything meaningful. And for many of you, this is your final class, and I think that if you are a business major, you have to understand the basics of finances. Okay, now I'm going to tell you this: I was not an accounting major. I am not a finance major. I've never taught an accounting class in my life. I've never taught a finance class in my life. I've taught consumer finance, so the business math and things like that I've taught, but I've never. This is not my world, and I don't like it. I'm not that guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I really don't. If someone starts talking about numbers, that's when I'm doodling. Okay, but you have to understand the basics of this. And so I'm going to talk to you about the basics. So why do we want to do revenue analysis? Well, we want to understand past financial performance, and we want to understand future financial potential. And what are we talking about with performance and potential? What we're talking about is, can we make money? And what does money really mean? It can mean all kinds of things. We see things like sales, profit margin, profit, gross margin, all of that. Really, it's all about the bottom line, and the bottom line is net income. That's what we're after when it comes to business. So what are we talking about? Okay, we bring in this money, and then after we pay for everything that we have to pay, we have money left over. But there are some terms in between that really matter, and this is the very basic of the basic information and the basic foundation of understanding how an idea goes all the way down to profit. Okay. So what happens is, when we're in business, we sell a number of units at a price. And that is our revenue, right? So if we have a number of widgets, we sell 100 widgets at $10, we just made $1,000 in revenue. Okay. When we look at that revenue, we have to say, okay, what is the cost of goods sold? This is really our variable cost. So in other words, what does it cost? What does this widget cost us? Everything that comes into this widget. What is the cost of this thing? And not only the cost of it, but what is the cost to get it sold, right? So when we look at everything, what goes into turning this widget into a sale. So I don't have anything. Let's look at this marker. We have this marker, and this marker, we sell this marker for, let's say, 50 cents. All right. So what goes into this marker? Well, the plastic, the ink, uh, the little tube inside, all of those things. There's a cost for that, right? And then also maybe there was a salesman who sells these, and they get a commission off of every one that's sold. Well, after we take the cost of goods sold out of that revenue, that gives us our gross profit, and also that is our gross profit margin. Now, what I want you to understand, so basically what I get this for and what I sell this for, that difference is our margin, but that's not our profit. That's our gross profit. And our margin is the ratio between the two. It can be expressed in dollars as well. But the thing is, profit margin in and of itself does not equal profit, because we have some other elements that might eat away at profit. And you'll see why here in a second. So we have our gross profit, which is represented by our gross margin, so the difference between the two. But that's not our profit. That is our profit before we have our operational costs, right? So we have costs that actually, the cost of running the business. We have factories, we have a building, we have rent, we have salaries, we have the administrative stuff. Those are the things it takes to actually run the business. And so there's some of that can be allocated to this product. So once we have our gross profit, then we say, okay, let's subtract our operating costs and leave us with our EBITDA. What are we really talking about here? It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So loans that we might have. This is really our financial and accounting cost of stuff. This is the stuff that you're like, okay, I got my profit, but then now I have to pay interest on loans that I have. Or maybe I actually, when we look at what happens when we buy a piece of equipment and we are able to take depreciation and it influences our taxes, maybe that influences how much money we have left because we can deduct some of that. But this is really our financial cost. As we go forward, we are not going to really be that much concerned. You're always concerned about it because it really is a cost, but we're not going to be concerned about that because we're not going to assume that we're paying debt or anything like that. So we're just going to do the things that are right there in front of our face. We're going to talk about the cost of goods sold, and we're going to talk about our operating costs. But what happens is when you take our EBITDA and you subtract the IDA part of it, so you subtract the impact of the interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization from that leaves you with your net income. And net income is the other word for profit. So when we're doing a profit analysis, what we don't care about all of these elements in and of themselves. We care about these elements to the extent that they influence our profit. When we say, is the company profitable? It is not sufficient just to say, yes, this company has great profit margin, because they might have margin, but their operation costs are too high. So you have to get all the way down to that bottom line, which is profit, when you're looking at stuff, okay? Now, in order to really understand what's going on for the future, we have to understand these things. How many units do we think we can sell? What price do we think we can sell them for? And these things are related, right? You don't get to, of course, we want to sell as many as possible, but you don't get to just set the price. You can. I mean, it's your decision. It's a company's decision. But if you remember from econ class, the price is going to influence the quantity demanded. So if you raise the price, fewer people are going to want it. And as a result, you're going to have fewer sales, in theory. And when you look at that number of sales times that price, it might have a certain amount of revenue, right? Then you lower the price and you're going to get more sales. And when you have that number of sales by price, then you have a certain number of revenue. There's a perfect price there based upon all kinds of factors and variables. You may lose money by getting more sales, or you may lose money by by increasing the price and having fewer sales. That's where price elasticity of demand comes in, right? And don't sit here and stress about that. My point is that you have to have pricing strategies. You want to price in a way that actually gets you the most sales that you can have. And then when you think about strategy, you have to think about some other things like capacity as well. If I can make 100 units per day and I have people standing in line for my product, I need to raise my prices. Yes, I would get fewer people, but I would be able to serve more people. I would have fewer people standing in line. It's part of, you got to be thinking strategically about this. If you don't have anybody coming through the door, maybe a good idea would be to lower prices or to increase the functionality or the characteristics of the product. But the thing is, those are things that you have to take into consideration. You don't just throw a price out there. You have to think about what people are willing to pay, right? So then you have to think about what is your variable cost. In other words, what are your cost of goods sold? That's what variable costs are, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to have the number of sold times the price. That's going to give you your revenue. Then you're going to subtract your variable cost, which gives you your profit, your gross profit. Then you have to think about your fixed cost. So what am I really going to have in order to continue to operate in this business? Now, and then basically, we're not, like I said, when we're looking at the paper, we're not going to concern ourselves with this. If you have information about that, that's great. But what we want to determine is what kind of profit is actually possible. Now, if we want to know how many units we think we can sell, that's where we come into the opportunity analysis part of this. So in your paper, you're talking about the market analysis. What are we saying with the market analysis? We're trying to assess the market. We're trying to assess the environment out there in order to determine what kind of need gaps, or desire gaps are out there in these environments. Basically, we're saying, hey, we're looking at all of these different things out there that might influence the demand that people have for particular products, right? So you look in the political environment, economic, sociocultural, technological. I'm going to give you some more detail about this. But if you notice, this is spelling out something here, right? Pestle. I learned pest. I always talk about pest because I include legal and regulatory on its own, and then the environmental, or legal and regulatory goes with political, and then environmental typically goes with sociocultural. But I don't have a gripe with this. But what we're really saying is when we look at what's going on in these environments, are there things happening that might be influencing groups of people to behave in a certain way as consumers? Does the political environment cause people to say, hey, we need this thing, or we need to get rid of this thing? We're not buying this thing anymore. And it's the same for all of these environments. Then we want to look at the demographic environment. Is there something going on with different age groups, or different jobs, or different industries, positions, among male versus female? Are there things happening that show up as trends that might show up as opportunities for us, that might create new markets or that might eliminate markets? And then we also have the natural environment that we're talking about, basically things that you see that are natural. Are there disasters that come through that create a market for things? We see this kind of thing all the time, right? If you look down in Florida, many of those pools are covered because the wildlife is different there. In the Midwest here, where I am, you hardly have any covered pools, right? So there's an entire market for those types of areas of people who are building the covers for pools, building the covered porches and things like that for pools. That's something that it doesn't exist here in the Midwest, right? What happens if there's a shortage of something? What happens if some coffee beans get wiped out because of the environment? What happens if there's an overabundance of something? That influences opportunity. So that's the first thing you want to do. Now, when you're looking at this for the marketing part of your paper, or the market analysis part of your paper, you're not going to talk about these specifically in your paper. You're just going to consider them. So as you're looking yeah, I want you to look at these environments and see how they might influence the product that you're talking about. And then you want to summarize it according to how I'm saying to address it with that assignment video. Because remember, I always want you to stay super focused on the thing that we're talking about. So I don't want you to get off in the weeds on each one of these. I just want you to use this as a guide to think about the environment and how they may be influencing opportunity or the perception of need out there in the market. Okay, because trends in these environments influence potential market opportunities. Now, the other side of this is that we need to look at the industry analysis part of this. Not only are there things that can happen in the industry or in the world that create a new market, but there are also people out there who are proposing to solve that problem as well. So you need to think about how competition is actually proposing to look at this market and to address the needs of that market. Now, there are many ways to look at it, but my favorite way, and the one that I advise on the most, is Porter's five force analysis. And we'll briefly go through the stuff here, but I'll provide you some resources that help you understand it a little bit more deeply. So, Michael Porter, who is like the godfather of business strategy, talked about the fact that there are five forces that basically influence industries. And this is really kind of a competitive analysis. So, what you're looking at is um, how you are positioned with regard to all of these things compared to everybody else in the industry. So this is kind of a competitive analysis. And those forces are the threat of new entry. So basically what we're saying is, what are the barriers? How hard is it for people to get into this industry? And when you're thinking about this, if you're already in this industry, you're not really saying, how hard is it for me to get into this industry? You're already in the industry. You're saying, man, I'm proposing to compete in this industry. How hard is it for others to get in? Because if it's easy, that's going to make competition more intense for you. But if it's hard, it makes it easier for you. So you're trying to assess that because that's going to assess whether there really is a true opportunity there. Then you have the threat of substitutes. So there are mainstream ways of dealing with problems, and then there are some other ways that maybe we're not thinking about. So if you are a gym owner, a lot of gym owners would say, okay, I'm a gym owner. People want to go work out. So my competition, if I'm, LA Fitness, my competition might be Planet Fitness. And you're looking and you're like, let me see what Planet Fitness is doing, or Goat's Gym, or whoever it is. Yes, that is your competition. But what are the substitutes? The substitutes might be workout videos, apps, things that people are doing that are different from how you deliver value, but that resolve the issue that they have or that solve the problem that they have. So you have to look at what else is out there. What are the other things that people can do to solve the problem that you're proposing to solve? It's not just about you determining you've got to do things my way. It's about you trying to understand, what are customers really doing? And do I have an opportunity to help them? The next threat is the threat of supplier power. Now, when we talk about supplier, what we're saying is you have you are a company and you sell to an end user. Sometimes I make a thing and sell it directly. But a lot of times, if you are a business, what happens is I make this thing and I sell it, or I consign it to maybe a retail organization. It goes through a distribution channel and then it gets to the final customer. If you look at beverage companies like Coke, they might say, okay, there are many different ways that I can deliver my product. So they go through distribution companies. Sometimes they're going through a bottling company, because we can buy bottles of Coca-Cola, we can buy cans of Coca-Cola, we can go to we can actually go to uh, sporting events and things like that at concession stands, and it's different. We're getting it a fountain drink, right? Restaurants, fountain drink, soda machine. These are different ways that product is getting to us. And what happens is, before we're making our product, there's a bunch of things that go into it. That's called our supply chain. So everything before us is our supply chain. Everything after us is our distribution channel. If I'm Coca-Cola, what's in my supply chain? Well, it could be the the provider of the raw materials, the plastic for the bottles, um, maybe printing for the labels or things like that. So everything it takes before it gets to me to be a product. Now, a company like Coke, they kind of are integrated um, into a single unit to the extent that they can, but they have a vast distribution network. But all companies are like this. So it's like, what are the things that I need in order to make my product what it is? And then how do I get it out? Well, everybody before me is a supplier, even if it's not a direct supplier. Now, those suppliers have different abilities, or those suppliers might have different bargaining powers based upon some factors. A couple of factors might be, how many of them are there compared to me? If they say, hey, we want to provide you with this resource to make your ice cream. If I get my supplies to make ice cream from this place and they come and say, hey, I want to raise the price, I'm stuck unless I have options. If there's a lot of them, then I'm like, that's fine, I'll go to someone else. If there's a lot of me, they would say, hey, I'm going to go to someone else, and they don't care, right? Also, what about the threat of vertical integration? In other words, can I produce that thing on my own? Is it feasible for me to actually provide access of that to that thing on my own, or is it possible for them to actually start doing what I do in the ice cream making process? Because if either one of us can do that, it influences the power. Now, you're not going to do a deep analysis on these things. I just want you to be thinking about that. And again, this is another thing. You don't need to even put these words on your paper. I just want you to be thinking about this as you're looking at your market analysis. The next one is buyer power. It's the same as with supplier power, but now you're the supplier. So everybody behind you is a buyer. Now that could be a wholesale buyer, a retail buyer. It could be some kind of distributor, or it could be direct to the end user. It's not just about the buyer. But what you're saying is, do those relationships exist with vertical integration? The number of people who are actually in the market? Are there a number of end user buyers? Are there fewer buyers, or are there a whole ton of buyers? So you're thinking about that as well. The bargaining power that the supplier or buyer might have influences how you might address that market, or if there's real opportunity there. And then finally, competitive rivalry. How intense is the competition in your industry? How many companies are actually there? Are there some that are real big and they're really powerful, and as a result, they're able to influence price? What we're really saying here is, when someone does something in the industry, how likely is it that I have to follow suit? Does it create price sensitivity? Is there price sensitivity there? So if someone changes prices, do I have to change suit? Because to the extent that there's price sensitivity, that's really going to influence what you have to do from a strategic standpoint. If your product is just like all the other products, then price sensitivity is going to be an issue, especially if there's a lot of competition. But if you have really done something that's innovative and it's out there, then all of this stuff is irrelevant. But these are things that you need to think about, right? And what are we really trying to arrive at? We're trying to arrive at how big the market is. That's what the market analysis is really about. And this is what we're after on your paper. So you're going to hone in on this. And you need to understand that so we have three concepts here. We have the total addressable market, the reachable market, and the share of market, right? So we have the total addressable market. Hey, there are, 100 million people who typically buy this thing all the time. So, there are people who might buy one of these things a year, all right? So our total addressable market is, how many people are there out there who have an interest for our product? But the mistake that people make is they think, if I can get each one of them to buy one time a year, you're not. So that is not feasible. It's not going to be feasible to actually think that the entire market of people who are looking for products like yours, all of them are going to buy your product. They're not. And it's not even feasible for you to address them. Sometimes your product is regional, and so you have to deal with people in a region. So the total addressable market answers the question, how big is the market? Then we say, what can we feasibly address? What does that mean? Well, when we look at our resources, what are we able to really do? Who can we reach? Who can reach us? Who can get to us? Who are the people who are actually looking for a product just like ours? So we pare that down and we get the reachable market. Now, there are other people who actually are in our reachable, competing with us for our reachable market as well. And so what we have to do is pare that down even more. And we have to answer the question, how are competitors addressing the problem versus us? And that tells us what our share of market is going to be. So if there's a total of 100 million people, maybe 50 million people is our reachable market, but we're not going to get everybody in our reachable market. We're going to get a certain portion. And if we get 10% of that means that we can address 5% of the market, 5 million people. Now, when you look at that and you say, okay, so let me look at my costs. If I can reach 5 million people and the price of my item is $10, then I can make $50 million a year. That's how this is the start. We're going to go through that here in a minute, the financial part. So when we're looking at share of market, what we're really saying is how many sales do we think we can get? When we look at sales, that turns into revenue. Sales times the price of that thing turns into revenue. Then we have to think about the cost of the thing that we're trying to sell, because that gives us our gross profit. Gross profit minus the operating cost. So you got to think about what you have to do to grow and things like that. That's going to lead us to net income. But we have to think about a couple of things. And this is where we are thinking about the future. We're not going to talk about these things per se this module, but I want you to start thinking about it, because if you do this correctly, it's going to make things easier for you in the future, because you could just say, hey, I already was doing this. I can put this in like module 3. You're going to be talking about the ROI, the ratio of your net income to the investment outlay that you have. So these are some things that we have to consider. And these are the things that entrepreneurs and investors are always considering. First is the break-even analysis. And we're concerned about that from 2 different standpoints. First of all, how long is it going to take me to get my initial investment back? When you have an investor and you say, I want $100,000, they're going to say, how long is it going to take for me to get my money back? Well, you're going to know that based upon the number of sales that you can expect times the price minus cost of goods sold minus operational costs. When you think about that, now you can say, okay, I think I can have you paid back in 5 years. And so they look at, does it make sense for them? This is also what companies are looking at when you're proposing to offer a new product. Okay, so we make this initial outlay. When are we going to be back in the money? When are we going to be in the profit? And most companies don't expect to be in the profit immediately. If you are, that's great. Then there's the break-even part of operating or fixed costs. In the beginning, because of the initial outlay, you might have a problem because you're trying to get all of that stuff paid back. But what we're really saying is on an ongoing basis, are we able to sell enough with that margin to cover our operational costs? If it costs us $10 million to operate, but we're not selling enough of the product to cover that fixed cost, we are not breaking even. So we got to kind of know how many do we need to break even. And really, we want to sell way more than that, because that's where the profit is. So we're concerned about break even, but we're also concerned about ROI. And this goes back to that investment. ROI, return on the investment, is basically saying the ratio of net income to the investment. So when I have an initial outlay, how much am I going to get back? That also is a roundabout way of telling investors when they can be paid back their money, right? Now, when you're thinking about ROI, and this goes into the next chapter, but you're thinking about it now because we're starting to talk about finances. Every company says, okay, when we make investments, we expect a certain amount of return, right? So we look at our required rate and we look at opportunity costs. If we invest here, we can get this return. If we invest here, we can get this return. So it makes more sense to invest where we get the highest return. So companies typically say we have a required rate for the investments that we have. So when you are proposing your new product, you have to think about, okay, what ROI do I think I can get? What does this company typically get what have they looked for in the past? Am I in line with that? That's how you get a good idea as to whether or not it's going to make sense for you to go forward with this project, okay? So you're actually going to dig into that stuff And you're going to pare it down a little bit, because it's not just about all of these things on this presentation. It's also about it's more about using this stuff in order to shape your mind so that you can be thinking critically about what to do. But when you get to the assignment part of the when you get to the paper where you're doing all of this stuff, what you need to do is follow what I'm telling you to do on the template and on the assignment video, because I'm telling you exactly what to do. Okay? I'm telling you exactly what to do and how to look at it. We don't want to talk about anything that we don't ask about. And I just want to let you know now, I want to remind you, use my template. It has the essential elements from the one that Snoop provides you. They actually provide you a template in this module. Mine is more detailed, and I want you to use my template because it's going to keep you focused on the things that we want to talk about here. And as you go through the paper, you want to talk about the things that we're after, and you want to not talk about things that we are not asking about. Okay, we want you to hyper focus in on the elements of the prompt. All right, and all of that is explained in the template as well as the assignment video. All right, so that's it for module 2. I know it's 51 minutes here. I apologize, but I just wanted to go through and provide you guys with a solid foundation. I want you to also look for some extra resources that will help with some of these concepts. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. Again, the best way is to text me. If you go to the Meet My Instructor announcement, it's on the announcement. You'll see my cell phone number right there, and you can text me and just say, hey, I'm having problems with this. If it requires a conversation, we'll have that conversation, but I'm hoping that I can answer it by text. So good luck, everybody. And if you need me, feel free to reach out.